If something makes you miserable, at some point you just have to stop doing it. So let this video serve as my resignation from the furry community. I could end the video right here, but undoubtedly people want to know my reasons why. So let me tell you just how awful the furry community actually is. I'm not the kind of person who usually calls people degenerates or cares about society's moral expectations. I'm pretty deep into the furry sexuality stuff myself, but even I know that you probably shouldn't fuck animals, and you definitely shouldn't fuck kids. But there is a sizable chunk of the furry community who do at least one of these things. When I first joined the community about 15 years ago, I was 14 years old. Almost immediately upon entering the community, I was tempted into online sexual encounters by older men. They do things like roleplay cuddling to groom me into getting used to increasingly sexual situations. At the time, I wasn't bisexual and had no interest in men, so they'd use furry female characters as their avatars so I'd have less of a problem with it. This would change over time as they introduced me to their other characters. It would start with sexual roleplay with their characters, but eventually led to talk about sex in real life, culminating in wanting to meet up for real-life sex. I was always smart enough to tell them no, which usually led to an argument, anger, and the ending of the friendship. This didn't happen just once. This happened numerous times over the years to me, between the ages of 14 and 17. Of course, I was just a horny kid without the knowledge or life experience to know what was going on, so I never reported any of those people, and it's been too long for me to remember their names at this point. The kicker here is that I fully believe that most of the people who were and are still involved in this are too delusional to actually realize what they are doing, or that there's anything wrong with it. If you are underage in the furry community, it is almost a certainty that you will be approached by someone who will try to prey on you. They are smarter than you, and they will use your emotions against you. They will lie about their age and gender, and you won't know. I've seen people try to downplay the amount of pedophiles in the furry community, but they fail to realize one thing. The furry community is a gathering place for horny teens who just want to be your slave, uwu. If you don't think actual practicing pedophiles flock to the furry community, you are a fucking moron. But let's move on to everyone's favorite topic. Now, it's no secret that about 20% of the furry community are self-proclaimed zoophiles. I have no doubt that at least half of those people are actively involved in bestiality, or have been at some point in their lives. In my mind, in concept, there isn't much of a difference between sex with an animal and sex with a child. Both are cases where one party is taking advantage of the difference in mental acuity, level of understanding, and power. I've heard many arguments like, "But my dog likes it." Well, my 14-year-old self certainly liked getting sexual attention from older, more experienced people, but that doesn't make it right. My point is that practicing pedophiles and zoophiles are extremely common in the furry community. But let's move on, because even without the rampant criminal activity, the furry community still has plenty of other problems with sexuality. Many people in the furry community are borderline sociopathic when it comes to sex. They will constantly push themselves on you for roleplay, forcing you to block them, and even after that, they will make new accounts and try to win you over in some new way. Sometimes they will go as far as to blackmail you or otherwise threaten you for not roleplaying with them. They will use emotional manipulation or outright lie to get sex from you. Oddly enough, I've noticed that some of the worst perpetrators of this kind of behavior are actually underage. These kids absolutely do not care about you or the amount of trouble you would get in for engaging in sexual activity with a minor. They will absolutely try to destroy your life for their own sexual pleasure. If you need examples of this, you can look at one of Dishonored Wolf's recent videos where he goes into depth about this exact thing. Fortunately, I'm suspicious and distrusting enough to have never been tricked into getting involved in something like this. But even the underage people aside, there's still many grown adults who do the exact same thing. They will pressure you into sexual roleplay constantly. I tend to be kind of a pushover and don't block people when I should, and this has led to various individuals attempting to get some kind of sexual activity out of me for years, even after me telling them hundreds of times that I have no interest in them. About 10 to 20% of my daily interactions with furries is just turning people down who want online sexual roleplay, and that is not an exaggeration. Now, I'm pretty liberal. I'm usually not the kind of person to care about how often people have sex or who they have sex with, or what kind of sexual activities they do, as long as they're legal. But being part of the furry community has made me wonder if I should reevaluate that. There are people in the furry community infected with life-destroying STDs like HIV, who still have sex with dozens of people, usually without the courtesy of telling them they're giving away a death sentence. We see these fun little charts pop up every now and then of who fucked who at a furry convention, because as it turns out, a few of those people had HIV. Some of these people will have sex with 9, 10, or upwards of a dozen people over the course of a 3-day convention. Now that's kind of impressive in its own way, and I don't want to judge others by how often they have sex, but I just feel like rampantly spreading disease throughout the community is somewhat of a bad thing. And obviously not everyone with HIV does this, but the problem is it only takes one person doing this to destroy dozens of people's lives. Knowing the lengths I've seen some furries go to try to get some sort of sexual activity, I have no doubt in my mind that it is common practice to lie about if you've got any sort of disease, or just lie about being tested in the first place, or just not be tested in the first place. Also, you can manipulate people into having unprotected sex. So having sex with a furry, especially at a furry convention, just seems a bit like playing Russian roulette. It even makes dating a furry dangerous because you never know if they're the kind of sex-obsessed psycho who hides their various STDs from you, tricking you into thinking that monogamous sex with them is safe, which sadly isn't as uncommon as you would hope. The sex obsession in the fandom is so bad that it seems to melt some people's brains into a sort of sticky white goo. I've noticed that generally the longer someone has been part of the furry community, the more likely it is that they can't actually hold much of a conversation. The only thing they seem to think about or want to talk about is related to sex. They don't really know how to speak to you outside of flirting, sexual RP, or linking porn. Now, I do like to flirt and I like to roleplay or look at porn once in a while, but I can't imagine doing those things 24/7. The amount of times I've gotten bewildered stares because I said I didn't want to talk about sex is kind of a testament that this really is all some of these people know. They don't seem to understand that there's more to having a personality than your sexual orientation and what kinks you have. Overall, I feel like the furry community can almost be viewed like a failed social experiment. What would happen if we broke down all the rules of normal society and got rid of all taboos and only ever encouraged people to do whatever degenerate sexual thing they wanted? And to be honest, I am guilty of feeding into this as well. I've made numerous videos defending various kinks and other aspects of furry degeneracy. Though I do want to make one thing absolutely fucking clear, because a lot of the morons out there don't seem to get it. I only ever defend kinks, art, and fantasies, not actions. For the first 20 years of my life, I was a pretty devout Christian. I was raised to believe that pretty much anything sexual was wrong and you were a bad person for even having thoughts. But even at a young age, I knew I was a furry. Even before I joined the fandom, I had sexual urges for anthropomorphic characters. I couldn't help but have those urges, and to this day, I still can't. This absolutely tortured me. The fact that I was such a degenerate and thinking that some all-seeing, all-knowing power knew this too and hated me for it. Even the people around me hated me for it. Other Christians called me a devil worshipper for having sexual thoughts about dragons. So when I turned my back on religion and the misery that comes with it, I took it upon myself to let others know that they were not hated for having those urges and thoughts that they can't control. But I thought there was an understanding that I was only talking about thoughts or artwork. When I talk about not hating people for having these urges, I never meant to encourage anyone into taking action. I still fully believe that people should not be hated or judged simply for thoughts or urges they have, no matter how terrible those thoughts are. But the problem with the furry community specifically is that for every person in the fandom like me encouraging people not to feel bad about having a certain kink, there will be someone else encouraging people to act out on those urges. I never meant to try to normalize things like bestiality or pedophilia, and I don't like those things myself. I only ever wanted people to know that I understand the struggle of having taboo thoughts that everyone else hates you for. But I think that the whole Kiro situation was really the final straw. When I first heard of some of the things people were being accused of, like sex with roadkill, I laughed to myself. No one does that. Sex with the rotting, bloody carcass of an animal? That's laughably, cartoonishly disgusting. That's something you think of when you're drunk to be the punchline to some over-the-top joke. Then I saw the videos and the pictures. When I was doing medical training for the Army, We had to watch videos of animals being sliced open so that we could see what arterial bleeding and grievous wounds looked like on something alive. But as awful as those videos were, and as hard as it was to watch, it had a purpose. It served to teach us and to desensitize us so that we could save lives someday. But as desensitized as I am to that kind of thing, I was not prepared for those zoo sadist group videos. They served no purpose other than the sexual gratification of an individual. Having urges is one thing, but actually going through with it, torturing animals and fucking their corpses and enjoying it on a sexual level, something is just inhuman about that. I don't want to share the same species as these people, much less the same community. I can't make videos showing the furry community in a positive light anymore. I can't defend people's kinks. Because whenever I get a message from someone who says they watched one of my videos and they want to be a furry now, I just feel a tinge of guilt. It feels like I've just recruited someone into an animal torturing sex cult. The furry community is full of some of the most hateful, vindictive people I've ever met, and at the same time, some of the most sensitive crybabies imaginable. Almost every furry I've ever had the displeasure of arguing with has no problem spewing hatred, insults, and outright slander, but will absolutely crumble when given back even a fraction of it. What's worse is that the community has this habit of wrapping their arms around the precious, delicate, crying baby snowflakes and then, what I've come to call, cry-bully their perceived oppressors. Across various furry chat rooms and even in my own Discord, I've seen people defend someone who I've had a minor disagreement with, as though I just threatened to murder their entire family. Often I hear the excuse, "You made them cry," as if shedding a few tears proves that something I've said was truly this unimaginable travesty. And God forbid that someone I say something even slightly abrasive to be a woman. There are so few women in the community that many of them, especially if they even have a small amount of artistic talent, are treated as incorruptible queens by their group of followers. And if you dare to so much as glare in their direction, their army of white knights will happily charge into battle, boners in hand. Most furries are terrified to have any public opinions about anything because they know it might upset someone. They're too afraid to even be associated with people who say things that might rouse the ire of the hive mind. And don't worry, we'll talk about that later. I've known people so afraid of being judged by other furries that they ask not to have their name put in the credits of my video as a supporter because while they agree with the things I say, they know that my name attached to theirs will probably get them put on some kind of blacklist for something. This is also why, when you speak to some furries, they apologize to you a dozen times within the first few minutes of meeting you. They are so used to everyone being so easily offended that they preemptively apologize for anything that could even somewhat be construed as something offensive. There's also a large portion of the community who seems to hate the idea of bettering themselves in any way. They seem to very much believe in the idea that you should stay a mental child for your entire life. If something upsets you, instead of confronting it, you should avoid it. If someone argues with you, you should block them, even if they were a close friend who was only trying to help you. Many furries seem intent on avoiding any negative emotion at all costs. If you have any sort of anxiety issues or problems coping with everyday life, you will be aggressively coddled. You will be told to avoid those things entirely. You will never learn how to deal with stress or anxiety. But dealing with stress is an important part of maturing. Dealing with negative emotions strengthens you as a person and allows you to feel less stressed. And not dealing with it has the opposite effect. It's no wonder that so many furries are perpetually depressed, angry, and offended. When you spend all your time running away from these emotions, even the slightest thing will upset you. In an attempt to run away from these things, they only ever make it worse for themselves. Many furries just ignore this, citing some self-diagnosed mental illness that prevents them from ever maturing as a person. So they sit and suffer forever and are forever coddled by this self-destructive community. The furry community is a bit like Neverland. You go there and you never grow up. You never mature mentally, emotionally, sexually, or socially. Maybe that's the reason why so many furries seem to have basically no personality. They have nothing interesting going on in their lives, they have no opinions about anything. All they know how to do is be angry and cuddle RP. Speaking of which, on top of being a figurative hugbox, the community is also quite a literal one. For whatever reason, the only activity the furries ever seem to want to do is cuddle. Instead of saying hi, you get a cuddle roleplay response. If you ask a question instead of an answer, you get a hug. Maybe it's because they know that if they actually say anything or have an opinion that goes at all against the status quo, they'll be chastised by the rest of the community. Or maybe they really just do lack the social skills required to hold a conversation. In any case, I do want to grow up. I do want to better myself, even if it means becoming a person that says things that parts of society don't really agree with. Having character means having character flaws as well. So, I'm leaving the community. I don't think anyone would argue that the average age of furries is about 19 years old, maybe even younger. I also don't think that it's a stretch to say that most people lose interest in being furries, or at least stop being super active in the community, by the time they're about 30. What this means is that the community is stuck in a perpetual high school atmosphere. And with that comes all of the annoying bullshit that you would expect. 19-year-olds tend to be pretty dumb and immature, and it's no different for furries. They'll believe anything they hear and spread rumors and unsubstantiated claims about people. They'll judge people and anyone those people associate with based on fabricated bullshit that makes no sense and could be easily rationalized if they spent even a few minutes thinking about it. I've had people who I thought were good friends completely turn on me because of some shit someone else said about me. To this day, there are people I was once friends with who will no longer talk to me because of some non-issue from years ago, or because I talked to someone that they don't like. As an example of just how ridiculous these rumors tend to be, I get both called a Nazi and an SJW, depending on who you talk to. Both sides of the fandom, which we'll talk about later, are absolutely sure that I am simultaneously both of these diametrically opposed things. It's so irrational a claim that I have a hard time even forming an argument against it, so I've stopped trying. They then take my silence as me admitting guilt. This is often the case. Anytime someone blocks you, ignores you, fails to answer a question, makes their profile private, or anything similar, people take it as an admission of some kind of guilt, even though it's almost always for the simple reason of just not wanting to deal with a bunch of idiots. Many furries lack even the most basic of critical thinking skills. Take this tweet, for example. This person has taken upon themselves to report any tweet they think might be breaking the rules. In the tweet, I make fun of the common trend of naming YouTube videos really outlandish and provocative things to get views. This person has taken that as some kind of threat because I use the words kill yourself. It takes someone else to convince them that this is not the case. This isn't an isolated incident. With almost every one of my tweets, there is usually at least one person who has no concept of context or humor, and they are always a furry. It's gotten to the point where I've seriously considered just blocking every person on Twitter with a furry avatar. Some of the tweets that I see are so stupid that I don't even feel comfortable making fun of them because it's quite possible that the person writing them is actually mentally handicapped. And even if they aren't literally retarded, I'd still consider their level of intelligence to be a disability. As I've said before, anything I'm stating here could be said about any group of individuals who are around this age. I didn't like teenagers when I was a teen, and I certainly don't like them now that I'm almost 30. It's not that this kind of immaturity is unique to the furry fandom, it's more that I don't want to be part of a fandom where this is the average mindset. Let me be clear, not all 19-year-olds are like this, and I don't hate you just because you're 19. If you like my videos, that's fine, I'm glad you watch them. It's just that I don't really think that we're going to have much in common, and I really don't want to hang out in your Discord server full of your 19-year-old friends. Let me put it this way. Think of a group of people you really can't identify with. For this example, we'll say 10-year-old girls. I seriously doubt that you want to play with Barbie dolls or put on makeup or whatever it is 10-year-old girls usually do. The things they have fun doing seem boring and uninteresting. You certainly wouldn't find conversations with them to be very stimulating. You are older and wiser, and the problems and issues they have seem very small and easily fixable to you. It's not a whole lot different for me compared to someone who is just coming out of high school. I don't hate you, I'm just not really interested in you. But it's not just the semi-generational differences in interest that pushes me away, it's also the extreme immaturity and vindictive nature that many furries seem to have. The best examples I can give are things that affect me personally on a day-to-day basis. I run a Discord server with about 3,000 members, most of which are furries. Occasionally, some of the members of the Discord will have some kind of issue with me. Instead of approaching me about it or just leaving and forgetting about it, they'll take it upon themselves to make yet another anti-Cothrix Discord server. They'll manufacture and spread misinformation about me. They'll stay in my server to find any sort of tidbits of information to give the world to try to make me look bad. And they'll even go as far as to support me on Patreon, just to share Patreon-only rewards with as many people as possible, in an attempt to sabotage my career. I've spoken to several other furries who are somewhat in the public eye, and this sort of thing happens to them too. This is the kind of childish and vindictive people that the furry community is full of. Just like high school, the furry community is an ongoing popularity contest and attention-seeking exercise. It's no secret, and it's often mocked, the lengths people will go to when designing their characters to be unique. So many bright colors, outlandish designs, and strange details, and much of it is simply for the sake of being noticed. Fursuiting, too, is often done just to seek attention. While people say they do it to express themselves, going to an actual furry convention with tons of fursuiters really opened my eyes to the truth of it. Many fursuiters would stand in open, public places simply to be seen. Some would stand by the entrance of the building for hours, walking back and forth in front of the entry line, just to be as noticed by as many people as possible. Just like their characters, people often make their fursuits as flamboyant as possible, adding bright neon colors, LED or strobe effects, noisemakers, any number of other things to get people's attention. People spend excessive amounts of money on fursuits from specific makers, because for furries, it's much like wearing name-brand clothing. I know the common reason is, I like their style, but that's the same thing anyone who spends $200 on a Supreme t-shirt says. This is more of a personal gripe, but it's always baffled me why people would be willing to spend thousands of dollars on these goofy, bizarre, giant-headed name-brand fursuits, when for the same price or less, you could get a more realistic-looking suit that not only looks way cooler and more interesting, but would fit right in at Renaissance fairs, anime, or gaming conventions. But I think that the answer is just that the giant-headed cartoonish style is trendy right now, and the only thing that matters is being popular. I used to watch furry cringe compilation videos where people would dress in their fursuits and go to Walmart or McDonald's. People would stop and stare, gripping their kids, obviously distressed at what was going on. I used to think that maybe the suitors were just oblivious to the scene that they were causing, but now I realize that they do it specifically to cause a scene. Frankly, I get kind of triggered when I go to a gaming or anime convention and see people in their fursuits dancing around at the entrance for attention. I wonder how many furries would appreciate if a group of historical reenactors dressed up in their Confederate or Nazi uniforms and danced around at a furry convention. I have no interest in dealing with high schoolers and people who act like them. I've already been through high school once and I hated it. Then I went through it all over again in the army. The furry community is in a perpetual state of high school and probably always will be. I have no desire to be part of it any longer. I don't use the phrase social justice warrior much because it doesn't have a whole lot of meaning anymore and it's mostly just used as an insult. And I'm not sure I've ever met someone who self-identified as a social justice warrior. But if I had to give meaning to the phrase, I would say it's a form of vigilantism. It's the idea that even if something someone does is legal, if it's something you personally still see as bad, they must be punished. And a large portion of the furry community very much epitomizes this idea of social justice vigilantism. They have a set of rules for how you will behave, and they will punish you through a variety of means for disobeying. Furthermore, they carry out this punishment without much thought or nuance because, well, who has time for that when you could just attack people in a blind rage? I call this group the hive mind. The hive mind knows what is best for you, for the furry community, and the world in general. The hive mind will bring about the next golden age utopia, and will do so through the cleansing of the impure, the unjust, and, well, anyone who disagrees with them, really. You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. I'm pretty sure Tumblr is pretty much dead, so the entire platform migrated to Twitter. But if Tumblr was a place for angry teenage leftist artists to bitch about social issues, then something tells me the majority of its users may have been furries. You cannot say anything on Twitter without at least a dozen or so pissed off 19-year-old furries telling you how much of a shit person you are. For a group that talks about how much they hate bullying, they certainly do a lot of it. The hive mind will go ahead and tell you that you aren't welcome in the community over the most minor of slights. Did you tell a slightly edgy joke 5 years ago? You're problematic. Did you express a positive sentiment towards someone the hive mind doesn't like? Problematic. Have you never actually done anything that could even be construed as some kind of ism? Oh, don't worry, the hive mind will find something. If you even seem like the kind of person who may have done something to someone at some point in your life, the hive mind will make you a target. They will intentionally take things you say out of context. They will fabricate evidence against you and outright lie. They will approach you and goad you into saying something incriminating. They will pose as a friend or supporter to get you to lower your guard. They will dig through your Discord server's message history to find things to use against you. They will bully you, harass you, dox you, and do the same thing to your friends. They will push you to the point of suicide and then openly celebrate your death. I am not exaggerating, this has happened. One of the most interesting things about the hive mind is the level of inconsistency within its own rules. Inconsistent moral outrage seems to be par for the course. For example, even the hive mind will agree that the furry community is mostly sexual and sexuality is something to be celebrated. However, the types of sexuality and fetishes you are allowed to have seem to change on a weekly basis. Today, bondage is in. It's a fun, healthy kink everyone should try to spice up their love life. But next week, bondage is disrespectful toward women and perpetuates rape culture. Last week, Lion King porn was perfectly acceptable. Everyone loves the Lion King. But today, all drawings of quadrupedal animals is the same thing as bestiality and will be shunned. Here's a fun experiment. Ask a member of the hive mind if furries are zoophiles because they sexualize anthropomorphic animals. They will say no, of course not, it's only artwork. Next, ask that same person if liking drawings of young characters makes them a pedophile. How could it if it's only artwork, right? Now sit back and take note of the mental gymnastics. The hive mind's rules are often so hypocritical and nonsensical that they are at times impossible to decipher. Take for example this tweet. There's a meme going around where you draw your character in a certain sweater. This person is responding to another, saying that they cannot participate in this meme because they are a Trump supporter and the meme was started by a trans person. You may think this person is just being over the top as a joke, but upon further inspection, no, they are being serious. Now, this is only one example, but these kinds of psychotically nonsensical tweets are fairly common within furry Twitter. The hive mind seems to believe that being the victim of something makes you the absolute authority on it. So much so that anyone who is not a victim of that thing is not allowed to have any sort of opinion on the matter. You may also not question the validity of those claiming to be victims. This has led to a culture within the hive mind of perpetual victimhood. The more bad that has happened in your life, the more powerful you become among its ranks. People wear their self-diagnosed mental illnesses as badges of honor, adorning their profile bios. I've seen people in heated debates over which one of them is more abused. Why would anyone ever try to improve themselves when being as disabled as possible grants you so much authority? And for all of the hive mind's efforts, they very rarely succeed in doing much of anything helpful. All their attempts to bully people out of the fandom usually only end up causing more people to oppose them, more people who are now militarized against them, more people voting for the political candidates the hive mind opposes. All of the hive mind's gatekeeping into the furry community is almost entirely useless. Even if the hive mind does succeed in getting someone banned from every furry website and every furry convention, that person can easily just make another character and re-enter the fandom. They do it all the time anyway. The hive mind represents groupthink at its worst. Why anyone would want to be part of a community completely inundated by this is beyond me. And what's worse is now a second hive mind whose stated goal is to be the anti-hive mind has popped up. In concept, opposing the hive mind is not a bad idea, but the problem is that the anti-hive mind tends to use the exact same tactics as those they claim to hate. Just take a look at my Kiwi Farms page. That's a fun read. It's got people on there who claim that I'm a Trump supporter and try to use it as an insult. At the same time, it's also got people on there who claim I'm a social justice warrior and try to use that as an insult. Two groups who claim to be completely opposed and claim to hate the tactics of the other side, but actually act the exact same way. Take the example of a recent tweet I made where I apologized to Dogpatch for talking shit about him and stating Dio is a decent person if you actually get to know her. If you don't know, those two are individuals often associated with the hive mind. Many of the responses to that tweet are some of the anti-hive mind individuals just being vitriolic. I responded by pointing out that what they were doing seems a lot like bullying, which they often accuse the hive mind of. And some of the responses to the second tweet are even worse, including one tweet for me to straight up kill myself, which unfortunately has been deleted. But my point is, in their mind, when the hive mind dogpiles people like this, it's abuse and harassment. But when the anti-hive mind does the exact same thing, it's criticizing someone's actions. Some of these tweets even seem to imply that if you've been abused in any way, it's okay to act like a complete cunt. That's starting to sound like some other people we know, isn't it? Now, I'm sure I don't need to go into more detail about the groups of people I'm talking about. You've definitely encountered many of them. I know it's not unique to the furry fandom, and I know vocal minority, yada yada, but there lies the problem. When we talk about this sort of behavior within other groups as a vocal minority, usually we're talking about maybe 5%, but in the furry community, it's more like a third. This shit is prevalent. With most communities or groups, like gamers, you can just kind of ignore the crazy ones. If you are a furry, you cannot escape them. Most of the major furry websites and conventions are run by these people. The only way to get away from it is to leave the fandom entirely. So I suppose you can raise your cans of illegally purchased Pabst Blue Ribbon in celebration, because this time you've won. I'm leaving. Listen, I know I'm not perfect. I used to be 19 too, and I'm sure I was a complete spaz, probably worse than some of the people I'm complaining about. I know I've aided in that culture of over-sexualization. I know that I can be a drama queen and that I am a bit oversensitive. But I want to change those things, and in order to do that, I have to leave the community. I've come to be known by some as the voice of reason within the furry fandom. If you believe that, then listen to my final message to you furries as a furry. The furry community is toxic. People throw around that word a lot and don't seem to know what it means. Let me explain. It doesn't just mean someone has a bad attitude. Toxic doesn't just mean that you're sick. Toxic means that you have such a volatile, contagious illness that anyone who comes into contact with you contracts that same illness and goes on to spread it to others. The furry community is toxic because the people inside it are infected with and spread a self-destructive, poisonous mindset. And the most dangerous part is that for the people infected, the symptoms are almost invisible. They're invisible because inside the community, those symptoms are the norm. Now, you can tell yourself that the furry community is just about liking anthro creatures, but that too is a self-deception, and one of the signs that you are being infected with this illness. You can talk about how anything I've said only applies to a vocal minority, but the fact of the matter is that almost every furry falls into at least one of the groups that I've mentioned above. So do yourself a favor and distance yourself from the community before it's too late and it's consumed 15 years of your life. I've tried to help the community from the inside. With these last few years on YouTube, that's been one of my goals. But I finally realized the problem. It's something I'll call the teacher's fallacy. That is, thinking you can teach a group of people who simply do not want to learn. As I leave the community, I want to give some clarification as to what I even mean by that. Despite everything I've said in this video, no, I don't hate you for being a furry. I don't hate furries in general. It's just that I'm sick of interacting with groups of them. I'm sick of the same arguments over and over. I'm sick of feeling stressed out about what the hive mind thinks of my latest tweet. And I just don't identify with the young adults who make up most of the community, so it's hard to find friends. But I don't hate you, and I'm not going to purge my life of all furries. Most of my friends are furries, and they will remain my friends. All that's changing is that I'll seek friends elsewhere too, which is something I've never really done before. I'm not going to stop making YouTube videos, it's just that now my videos will be less furry-centric. I'm not saying the topic is completely off limits, but videos about it from now on will be as someone outside the community. And yes, I'll still be using my dragon as my channel mascot, but I'm going to be making some changes with how I make videos so the overall presentation is less furry. And while I'll always be interested in anthropomorphic characters, art, and animation, I'm going to cease using furry as an identity. Think of it like someone who's moving, someone who lives in the city but has gotten sick of the insane drivers nearly being mugged on a daily basis and the general atmosphere of city life. I'm still the same person, just in a different location, a little bit further away. You're still welcome to come visit.